Early risers were we three that Christmas morning, 1942. Bobby woke up me and Charles by 3:30 in the morning. Bobby was 9, I was 7, and Charles 5.5. World War II had been going on for over a year now, and that was the main topic of discussion for most grown-ups. But kids are kids, and what few toys we did get was well appreciated. About 30 minutes later, we're out in the front yard next to the street light playing with our toys. A few minutes later, here comes a woman and a little boy about my age walking down the sidewalk. And I thought to myself, now why isn't he home in bed? Santa Claus has already been to my house. We had always been told you got to be in bed asleep or Santa's not going to stop by your house. I just stood there and watched them as they walked on down and turned the corner and started down the hill on that road that leads to Red Hill. I remember thinking, I hope Santa Claus is still in our town so that little kid can get some toys for Christmas. The following summer, me and Bobby went to pick some blackberries. As we were picking berries, some other boys showed up and started throwing rocks at us. And Bobby says, well, you keep on picking and I'll throw rocks back at them. A few minutes later, a big rock lands smack dab in the middle of my bucket, and blackberries just splashed all over the place. We then figured it was about time to go home. We were in Red Hill territory. Next fall in early October, me and Bobby were playing in the front yard about noontime, and Mama suddenly comes running out the front door shouting that the house is on fire. A man who lives in Red Hill just happened to be walking by on the sidewalk, and without hesitation, he runs into our house and puts out the fire right by the kerosene stove. My mother did not know how to thank him. Friday morning, on Christmas Eve, boy, it was still dark outside, and we heard police sirens just as Mama was starting to cook breakfast. There was lots of commotion down the corner, right in the middle of the road that leads to Red Hill. A man was lying face down in the street, and the police told us that he was dead. He evidently was from Red Hill, so the police said, and had been shot and killed. Boy, I was afraid of the dark for a long time after that, and Bobby would come crawl in bed with me and Charles. Boy, I made sure that I was always in the middle. A few months later, some good news. Our dad was moving us to another rental house about a mile away from there, and most certainly a good ways away from Red Hill. As time and years passed by, Red Hill slowly faded from my thoughts of each day, and Bobby started sleeping in his own bed. In my senior year of high school, I got a part-time job in Dr. Johnson's drugstore as a soda jerk. And on that very same day, another kid, a senior from a different school, got a job as stock boy for Dr. Johnson. After a few weeks, we became fairly acquainted. His name was Ed. Come to find out that he had grown up in Red Hill. And what really surprised me, he was the same little boy walking by our house with his mother that Christmas morning, 1942. And even more surprises, his dad was the man that put out the fire in my mother's kitchen. And his dad was murdered and dumped in the middle of the road that leads to Red Hill on that Christmas Eve morning, 1943. Ed said the police never did find out who murdered his dad. And with no father to support them, he and his brother and his mother had to move in with his grandparents at their house. And yet another surprise. His older brother Jeff had thrown the rock that landed in my blackberry bucket. And Jeff had been drafted in the army and sent to Korea, where he died in battle, defending his country in that terrible war that some politicians called a conflict and not a war. A few years later, I joined the military services and never did see it again. Red Hill, that community of hard-working people, a community of unpaved streets and no sidewalks, where it was very muddy when it rained and hot and dusty when the weather was dry, and where very little grass ever grew, was now a city park. I suppose the phrase Red Hill had, and rightfully so, been coined by the people that had lived there. Now, wouldn't it be wonderful if there were no red hills in this world, where all children could wake up early on a Christmas morning to the thrill of finding a few toys given to them by an old fat man in a red suit? And wouldn't it be wonderful if no mother, son, or daughter had to be sent to lands far away to never return? I never lived in my hometown again, but with each new Christmas season that comes and goes, and out of all Christmas seasons in my entire life, the one that stands out in my memories is the year 1942 in Red Hill. Each season I can still see that little boy walking down the hill on the road that leads to Red Hill, and hoping that Santa Claus was still in our town, so another little kid could also get a few toys at Christmas to play with. And each Christmas, I will wonder if Ed is still alive. And I will wonder if he is a grandfather as I am. And I will wonder if there ever would be any grandchildren playing outside early on a Christmas morning, playing under the streetlight with their toys. And I will wonder. Merry Christmas, Ed, and Merry Christmas to you.